Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Sheree Wallach. My partner in crime, as always, Vasily Giannarakos. Vasily, what's going on, brother?
As we record, it's hump day today. Obviously, while everybody else listens, it'll be Thursday tomorrow, but we're almost at the weekend here, so I'm doing well. Just in terms of Flyers news, a lot of rumors coming out the last couple of weeks, so we're going to dive into that.
Yep.
A lot of mock drafts and just draft talk in general happening, just with the Stanley Cup Finals underway, and really the brunt of the NHL now, other than Edmonton and Florida, focused on the NHL draft ahead. So there's a ton of mock draft stuff we're going to go through, just a ton of draft talk in general, also rumor talk, as I was mentioning before. So I'm good, man. It's going to be a fun episode. We got a lot of topics. How you doing, Yariv?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. I can't believe the draft is like it's not obviously almost here, but it's not that far away. We're talking
Yeah,
about
we're in the
two
month.
weeks,
We're in the
two a
month of
little over two
June.
weeks. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like once
Yeah.
we're in June, it's kind of like I was saying, like mostly the remainder of the NHL is focused on the draft, aside from the teams that are, in the Stanley Cup final right now. So there's a
Yep.
lot going on NHL wide in terms of the draft, just with the combine too that just happened as well. So
Yeah. Something that we have to talk about is how we're going to cover this event. But for those who are not aware, we did post it online. We mentioned it several times. We're going to have Steve Kornianos on here on the 17th.
yeah.
So the week before, 10 days before the draft, we're going to have full breakdown of definitely the first two rounds. Talk to Steve about it. There's a good chance we're going to go really long on that episode. We're
I
going to
think people
talk.
would like that though, right? We go super in depth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're going to go super in depth. We're going to talk about lots of different players, all the scenarios that were mentioned on here in the weeks leading up. We're just going to talk Steve's heads off. He loves coming on here to talk about it. Again, he has his own mock draft. It's all behind a paywall on Substack. So you can look that up, and I would recommend paying for his content because he is awesome. And he kind of guards everything now at this point. And just a little bit of insight, like people take his stuff, so that's why it's all behind a paywall now. He's tired of giving it away for free.
smart for
Um,
him to do
yeah,
that, right? Like don't let people take your work and kind of basically take credit for what he's done. So I think
yeah,
I'm glad that he's done that, and he uses our platform to kind of give his
yeah,
insights so people don't steal his work, because he works so hard and puts so much time into it, right? So
yeah.
I could imagine his frustration. I know you were saying too, like with the draft, like we don't really know how we're gonna cover it. Usually I'm at the draft, like the last three drafts I've
Right,
been
yeah,
there. I figured, with my wedding coming up and just with it not actually being like a centralized thing this season, like the GMs obviously aren't going to be there. The teams aren't going to be there. It's not the best coverage from a media perspective. Like usually the reason I like to go is you get to pick the brains of the GMs and kind of the brain trust and the scouts and the
right,
assistant GMs. So maybe we'll do like a live
yeah.
thing or
Well,
something on the Friday night. That would be
yeah.
cool.
We'll see. We'll do something special. We haven't talked about it yet, and I'm like realizing it now that we need to. I'm so focused on the pre-show because it's a big
Yeah.
deal for us. But we'll have coverage. I'll probably be down the shore, but I'll take my equipment with me so I can churn up videos if needed. Um, so we'll figure it out. We'll definitely have good coverage on here, and there's already a post-draft episode scheduled with Steve. It's most likely going to be July 8th. We're going to skip the holiday period because Steve's not available then. So after July 4th, the American July 4th, holiday season, we'll let that pass, and then we'll come in and just cover all the players in depth that the Flyers did draft. But hopefully, we give you enough stuff that we hit on players that the Flyers actually end up taking. That's pretty hard to do all throughout the draft, but we'll probably hit on at least the first round picks. So we'll go through all of that stuff. So there'll be a lot of pre and post draft content, and that'll be covered. And then we are talking to Steve about bringing him on for free agency as well to talk about just like NHL craziness. So we'll have another episode with Steve coming up after that. We want to get Steve on here as much as possible. We try not to take up too much of his time. But if you guys haven't noticed, this is like the only show he comes on outside of OMB, who we hook them up with Steve as well. And he loves Flyers Nitty Gritty. And other than that, he doesn't really like going on podcasts. So this is kind of the best source for his content outside of going directly to him. All right, let's get into the pre-show stuff, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of the actual show. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notifications, get notified when we release these episodes. Sometimes we do them a little bit randomly, so it helps. Also, for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes, give us a rating and a follow if you can. If you guys have not done any of those things, the likes, the subscriptions, the ratings, the follow on the audio, please do so. That is the best way to support this show. We definitely had an increase in subs of late, so please keep that up. We want to keep growing, and hopefully we grow more over the off season. Sometimes we do find that as there's a lot of speculation and trades and all that stuff. Also, shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks of 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. They also have other stuff like hoagies, fries, and everything else good like that. So make sure to go check out Steve's and get yourself a cheesesteak. They're the best. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible and help you deal with all the headaches that come with dealing with insurance companies. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, sportspider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, sportspider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out sportspider.com. The link for SportsSpider is in the description of the video and audio versions of this show. Make sure to check them out. Our stuff is always pinned at the top of their site. All right, let's get into it. We're a little behind on this one. We mentioned it already, but there is, I guess, some updated news over the past 48 hours. So there are rumors that Maxim Shabanov, the top European player available as an unrestricted free agent this offseason, is rumored to be coming to the Flyers. There has been zero progress in the public eye since then. And then we had an update from the agency, Shabanov's Russian agency, stating that he will make a decision after the draft. So still 3 weeks away. So kind of put a pin in that for at least the public sector. It was a little bit quick. We heard those rumors before. We saw it with Fedotov, Kolosov, Mitchkov, where rumors kind of break out in Russia before they hit here. Again, the Flyers have zero control of what happens over in Russia and conversations over there. We will say this. We have at least some good insight that this is still happening. We can't say why. We promised we would not. And while a lot of people are probably going to throw shade on this because it's going to take more time than we thought, just off of the initial announcement that came out of Russia, we have heard stuff like this again in the past. We heard Mitchkov was coming over, the Flyers didn't know anything about it. Look, we don't know where that specific rumor that Express Sports came out with. We know they are reliable, but we have some insight. We can't guarantee it, but we have some insight that this is still happening. And it's pretty good insight, but we cannot guarantee it 100%. And this is not to downgrade anybody who covers the team who has inside sources beyond us. Somebody like Anthony Sanfilippo is really good at breaking news like this in general. We don't know his sources. He obviously has great sources and sources within the team. But we do know that there's still a good chance that he is coming to Philly. Anything you want to add to that, Vasily? And then let's get into the player a little bit more. I want to talk about him, but anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have the full quote from the RG Media article just about
Thank you.
the agent just claiming essentially, that they're going to wait until after the draft. So it was reported that Shabanov's agent, Alexander Chernik, told RG Media, "We're still in the process of talking with teams." Chernik said, "Right now we're waiting for the draft because that's when trades happen and team situations change. Then the free agency will open. We want to see how the league landscape looks. It's not a fast process." Obviously, as Yuriv said, right, we have some intel. We cannot share who that's from, but based on that, there is a likelihood that we believe that this, probably should occur. But similar to Mitchkov, similar to Fedotov, right? When these things got reported out of Russia initially, the Flyers and then other media sources kind of were stating, there's no
It's not a
truth to
done deal
this, or
or
it's not a done deal, or we don't really know about anything that's happening. And I think with these contract negotiations that can occur out of Russia, like a lot of
sure.
this and a lot of these things kind of happen, right? These like backroom kind of shady dealings where who knows really what needs to be put into effect for Shabanov to kind of leave Russia. Like maybe there's some sort of money that needs to change hands. There's always these interesting things that can happen, when you're dealing with Russian players, kind of as we saw with Mitchkov and Fedotov, right? Like we saw that, last year that Mitchkov was rumored to come to the Flyers, and the Flyers denied that. Then we saw Fedotov sign, a very lucrative contract. And he was represented by the agent that also represents Matvei Mitchkov. And then a couple weeks later, Mitchkov signs, right? So you kind of look at all those things and you kind of connect the dots. And I wouldn't say that a similar thing is occurring here by any means necessary, but I think we just have to look at all the smoke that we're seeing, right, across the internet coming out of Russia. Typically, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I'm just gonna, implore everybody to do a little bit of their own critical thinking here, a little bit of their own reading between the lines, and kind of take what we're saying as you will. But just know that, there is a likelihood of this happening. Most likely after the draft, after free agency, as the agent's saying. But that's what we've heard. And like you were saying, right, not to downgrade anybody else. We're just kind of giving insight into what has been told to us, right, from kind of our intel. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, realize that he's going to have a different agency in the United States, right? So like what the US agent is working on with the Flyers, it's going to be a double communication with the Russian side. So it's going to be a complicated process. It always is. The one thing I do, and I think we talked about this last week, when I see a player, and I do like this player, by the way, I watched some footage of him, clearly highly skilled player. I mean, you have to be out of your mind just looking at his highlights. He's got a lot of the similar like skill sets as like Mitchkov, only he's like a little bit smaller. He's like more of a speedster,
Plays
playmaker
with
type.
pace. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be aggressive too. I do hesitate still with the translation of like KHL players. We don't know exactly how his game's going to translate over here just because the guy is a star. Like if he was 21 years old and he was putting up these numbers, I'd be like probably
Eye
more on
popping.
board.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact that he's going to be 25, he's a great player in the KHL, that doesn't always translate. Like Josh Levo is like one of the best players in the KHL league. Like you have to think about it. He's like an elite AHL player. So
Yeah.
even so, he might only translate to even at best might only translate into a really good third line player. Maybe that's not the case. Some players bloom later. It looks like in his career he did actually bloom later. So there might be a higher upside to that. But I'm not looking at this as like a complete replacement for Bobby Brink, and we should immediately trade him, though that might be on the table for the Flyers as it is. But I think it's more of like you can bring over a potentially really good player, a top nine guy for nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And odds are it's a 1 year deal, maybe around $3 million, right? Something like that, maybe less. It could be 2.5 or something like that. But it's a chance for him to get in the NHL. And I'll say this, and then I'll pass it over to you, Vasily. If you do look at the Flyers, and this is why we also think that there's a good chance, if you do look at the Flyers roster position of the teams that were named, the Flyers on paper, we literally do not have a third line left wing. Like we don't have one right now. Like Jacob Peltier is an RFA and doesn't necessarily it's not somebody we would immediately pick above Shabanov, right? It's a guy
Yep.
that we might even trade for all I know, right? Might not even be in the regular lineup for the Flyers. So there is a spot open. There is an immense amount of cap space opening up, like crazy amount. I was actually looking at it. It's really like 56 million if you include, and obviously this is without the additional re-signings that we still need to do, but without with if you include like Ryan Ellis's $6 million, it's 56 million in cap space open into next year as of right now. So like we have the money to re-sign the guy. We have the spot in the lineup, right? It makes a lot of sense. We have Russian representation, and we have the Mitchkov factor, which a lot of these guys are gonna want to play with Mitchkov, right? And it makes sense. Like I'm an Israeli, you show me Israeli people, I'm gonna be more connected to them, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
of course, right?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
I would assume too that like you have Mitchkov and Shabanov. I don't know what their relationship is with one another, but I would assume Mitchkov playing in the KHL the last couple seasons, there must be some sort of familiarity there, and maybe they know each other. Who's to say? We don't really have that insight, but that's one thing that you could kind of put two and two together there. Just to your point with him, right? Like if you look at his career. Obviously a smaller winger, like his hockey DB has him listed at 156. I listened to Alex Appleyard on PHLY the other day. He's kind of going into
Oh, he's
Shabbanov,
killing it
and he,
on that show, by the way.
yeah, Appleyard's
Definitely listen to
awesome
that. Yeah.
on that show and on Twitter. He's awesome in general, but
Yeah.
he was even saying like that weight's probably way like out of date.
Yes.
Like he's likely probably up to like around 170 or something like
Yeah.
that. But if you look at his career in general, right, like there's no guarantee this guy's gonna be hitting the NHL and be a superstar or anything. Like you look at the point progression and the point totals year to year. Like he started out 22-23 his first full KHL season, 31 points in 67 games. Then you go 2023, 2024 in 64 games, 50 points. Then this past season is really the coming out party, right? 67 points in 65 games, and then 20 points in 21 games played
In the playoffs.
for them in the playoffs. So I would say like you see a natural progression to his game. Maybe that's what's really interesting with the
Yes.
Flyers, that you could
Totally.
continue to see him progress here. Um, I would also say too, it's really just a low risk, high reward type of signing, right? Like you're not giving up any assets. You're likely, you have to sign him to a 1 year deal. So it's not like you're locked into him for any sort of length. And after that 1 year deal, he'd still be an RFA and in your control. So really for the Flyers, it's a no brainer. Just if he wants to come here and if he wants to sign, obviously. So if they do sign him, I just think that there's ability to really maximize an asset that you did not have to give up anything to acquire, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of where the attractiveness comes
Totally. Well
for
said.
it. With these Russian players too, like it's always like a boom or bust situation. Like everybody wants to think, oh my God, it's Kaprizov, it's going to be Panarin. That's the best case scenario, and he might turn out to be that, right? Because these guys come over at 24, 25 and put up these amazing seasons and up being these superstar players. So the potential is definitely there, but we also have to remember, right? Like it could end up being a Nikita Gusev, who a guy that put
Nikolai
up big.
Zherdev.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, guys that put up big KHL numbers, at least in Gusev's case, came over, didn't work out. Jared obviously a very high draft pick, tons of talent, but the work ethic was never there. Or then you get some of the guys where it's like an Evgeny Dadonov, where the guy, he's a decent player, could be a middle six guy, but he's not, like a superstar player. And that could be the case
That
as
would
well
that would
for
still be great
Shabbanov.
though. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's found money, right? Like if you're paying a guy, let's say hypothetically, limited dollar amount and not having to give up a lot of assets, and then you find, a second, third line player, that's found money for you as an organization. And then also another guy that's an example could even be like a Kuzmenko type, where you put him around skilled guys, he might have the ability to produce at a high rate, but if you have him lower in your lineup, then maybe you see that he isn't as much of a fit, right? So we'll see ultimately if he comes over and he signs with the Flyers, what type of player he is. But I just think these are the types of signings the Flyers should be looking at in terms of European players, right? Guys that
Yeah.
have that talent. There's obviously like tangible talent there you can see within his game, and if he is willing to sign and comes over, and you do end up getting him under contract, I just think there's an ability to really maximize what he can give you just with playing with the Mitchkov perhaps. So
Yeah, and the creativity is what I love, right? Like the risk when you have it. This is why you want the open cap space. This is why you don't want to go all in on UFAs this year. You want to keep having the flexibility that you can take these creative avenues to look for diamonds in the rough. I brought this up.
yeah,
Like this should be the team's goal right now, this upcoming year, is look for diamonds in the rough, right? They're finally adding players. This is not really the time to add like a 29-year-old Sam Bennett to an 8-year deal. Obviously he would help any team, but like we're not in a Stanley Cup position. We're not adding this player and then being like, this is, we're not the Maple Leafs that are looking for that essence to take them over the hump. We're just trying to be a good team. So we have the opportunity definitely for this year to approach it that way. And it might not be what people want ultimately, but a player like this does satisfy a lot of the needs that people have, which is adding high end talent. The guy clearly has at least hints from what I see online of high end talent. So it's a lottery option, and it's a good one. I mean, it paid off with a guy like Bobrovsky back in the day for the Flyers, right? He was 22 years old when we brought him over, right? You got to look for these type of opportunities. Didn't so much work out with Fedotov, who had great numbers in the KHL. We even drafted him, right? But he didn't come over here and was lights out, right? So you just have to be aware of that. But it's a risk absolutely worth taking. And we believe there's still a really good chance that he's coming over here and signing with the Flyers. And we'll take it from there. And for all those people who think that the Flyers are just going to replace Bobby Brink, I already was open to the idea the Flyers potentially are shopping him more because of his contract situation. He's going to want more money. We can re-sign him, but they clearly want size. He's also a valuable asset to move in a trade, right? So it makes sense. But remember, like Bobby Brink over in the KHL would probably have similar numbers to Shabanov, maybe even better, and he's younger. So it's just something to consider. It's like it doesn't necessarily make like Bobby Brink completely expendable. I don't think that the Flyers are really relating it to that. I think they more just we have an opening in our top nine. We're looking for talent. This guy is out there. If we can bring him over without
Yeah.
trading any assets, it makes it easier to trade Bobby Brink because we didn't give up any assets to add
Or
another player.
exactly. Or you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Shabanov has a great season, but one of their other wingers also matches his production, for example. You end up trading Shabanov instead of the other winger.
That's possible too.
You never know what's going to happen. Like, obviously,
Happy Kuzmenko.
no, but that's probably unlikely, but it's still possible. Like anything's on the table. The main thing is you get the asset under your control if you're Philadelphia in the situation, and then really you could do whatever you want, right? You can
Yeah.
re-sign him, you can trade him, you can use that asset to create more value for you down the line. That's the ultimate goal, right? You want to try to accrue talent now and maximize your assets as much as you can. At least where Philadelphia is in terms of their rebuild at this
Yeah.
point.
And you know what I really love about it is that it's hints that the Flyers are becoming a desirable place again, where we really weren't for a while. And now you can really see the upswing. And it comes with cap space and the new coach and Mitchkov coming here and the prospect pool and the fact that we're like highly competitive, even though we're not that good. We're still a rugged team that will. We beat Florida this year several times, like during the regular season. With just a bunch of things that are kind of hinting that we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, it's all culminating together, really.
Yeah. So adjacent to Shabanov is Mitchkov, and the piece of news that came out recently was the voting for the Calder Trophy, Rookie of the Year in the NHL. Mitchkov finished fourth. As far as I remember, he had 0 votes for number one.
Which
Which
leading the class in goal scoring is kind of nuts to me with
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So it fell as in Hughes. Oh my God, Hudson. Sorry,
Hudson.
not Hughes.
Yeah. Lane
Hudson,
Hudson.
Lane Hudson. I was about to say Line A and Hughes. Lane Hudson ended up with the definitive top spot. Dustin Wolf, the goaltender, got number 2.
He had a great season too. So.
Yes. Celebrini got 3rd and Mitchkov got 4th. I will say this, and I said this on Twitter. There is no GM in the league that is going to take Lane Hudson over or Dustin Wolf over Mitchkov and Celebrini. And I'm
Yeah,
honestly
if you're building a team, right? Like, why would you want to do that?
I'm also more offended that Celebrini finished 3rd. In my opinion, he was the rookie of the year. Like, and I know he didn't lead in points, but he had the highest point per game pace. He has the best rookie year we've seen essentially since like McDavid, or at least in a point per game pace, like sense. I guess maybe Panarin is up there too, but Panarin was what 25 when he
Yeah.
came over. Like the kid was 18 years old. I'm more offended at that he ended up at 3 because I'm like, if Celebrini ended at 3. It makes sense to me if Mitchkov ended up at 4 because I don't know what the hell people are thinking. I saw lists out there. I sent it to Vasily and Jamie. It was like Lane Hudson is the 3rd best rookie defenseman in like the modern 50. I think that's a load of nonsense. I think he had a great year. I think he achieved most of his points through secondary assists, which makes sense in the position that he's in. But he had a lower point per game pace than Shane Gostisbehere in his rookie year. So it's like I don't see Lane Hudson as like the next Cale Makar. I see him as like, oh, this guy is future top pairing defenseman, offensively talented, defensively kind of mediocre. Um, but it has a great offensive game. And I get it why he won, but this like definitive win as the top rookie, I don't understand that. And then some people actually, and it's crazy to me that some people voted for Cutter Gauthier above Mitchkov for the fourth best rookie of the year. Like, if that doesn't tell you that this list is a joke, I don't know what to tell you.
People might
Like,
not be watching based on that voting criteria, right? Like that's my thought. Like I look at it this way: you have the two Canadians over Celebrini and Mitchkov. Personally, I think it should have probably went. Like I knew Hudson was going one just based on like the historic assist as a defenseman.
which is
He put
fantastic. I agree.
yeah, or like he put up a ton of points. Also just the fact it's Montreal and they made the playoffs and him putting up all those points was conducive to them and
Sure.
helping them make the playoffs. I think
Yes.
those are the main things that are probably getting him to one. But having Wolf there, okay, like I personally, if Calgary would have made the playoffs, I think Wolf should have been first because they had a huge bounce back for where they were. I just think it's like Canadian media, right? Like you
Yeah.
have Canadian media voting on this. Is it surprising to me that the two Canadian teams are first here with these guys? Like, based on that, not really. It should have probably been like the real order probably should have been, if we're going on who's deserving it. Hudson was always going to get first based off this Canadian media narrative and the points. Celebrini second, Mitchkov third, Wolf fourth. That's probably what I would have
That's
had.
what I was like expecting.
That's what I would expect. I mean, my personal opinion, I think if you're leading the class in goals, you should be in the top two.
Yeah.
Like it probably should have been Celebrini first due to the points per game, Mitchkov two, due to the goal scoring lead, and then you have Hudson in there. But like I said, the Canadian media bias is real. And we were saying offline, no surprise at all. It's the two guys playing for Canadian teams who had great rookie years that end up first and second here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right about that. I don't care at the end of the day.
I
Um,
just thought it was funny. Yeah.
yeah. Like Lindros didn't win Rookie of the Year. You know, McDavid didn't win Rookie of the Year, which is insane because he's by far the best player in the world. Um,
Yeah, that's wild.
yeah. And then that was injuries. But again, point per game pace was insane. He was point per game
And you
player
could tell
at
he was going to
18
be
years old.
you could
Right.
tell he was going to be generational too. So
Yeah. So like I just don't care. But I think it devalues the trophy the way the voting is
yeah,
going. Um and whatever. It is what it is. It's not like I think they should change the rules or something. It just makes me take it less seriously. You know, there's all kinds of things, it is what it is. Look, they're trying their best with the voting. They try to spread it around, but we're never going to agree with it. And personally, like, I do think that Tortorella somewhat hurt Mitchkov's odds of winning this because of the
oh, we
amount of
thought
ice
his point
time.
per game, right? We
Yeah.
thought his point per game after Tortorella left versus, I mean, before it was still decent, but there was a
It was
couple of
ramping up
stretches.
before, but yeah.
There were stretches where there was downturns for him
He
under
just
Torts.
it
So
was just more that he didn't play Mitchkov to the ice time on a consistent basis that he should have been playing. He benched him during a couple of
yeah,
games, which probably created
definitely.
perception around the league that he wasn't playing well. You know what I mean? Like, which
The
again, this is
narrative
media,
is a big
right?
thing in terms of the
Right.
voting. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think he marginally hurt him, but I do believe that what Torts did will make Mitchkov a better player moving forward. So it's a trade-off for the trophy and the lessons learned. And I think the lessons learned, I don't think Tortorella was wrong about trying to make him a better two-way player. Like, it was the year to do it. He didn't have a lot of levers to pull, at least from his standpoint. These were the levers that he pulled. We know he went too far, obviously. Otherwise, he would still be coach. I don't think that's the reason the Flyers let him go or anything like that. But statistically, I think it probably hurt Mitchkov in somewhere in between 5 to 7 points on the year, which would have put him, a clear cut number two, at least, in the call. He would probably surpass Celebrini if that wasn't the case. And then, you lump on the fact that how terrible the Flyers power play was and the fact that the only reason it was even marginally better was because of Mitchkov. Um, and then he wasn't being used in the same way for a while. Just a lot of head scratching stuff this year that I think led to him not ending up in the top three. But it was irrelevant. He's still a franchise player to us, and the rest of the league will notice. Okay, so the other bit of news is the combine. We mentioned it last time that it was in progress. So we didn't really have too much to report outside of the McQueen news about his injury update. But the combine is now over. There was a lot going on at the combine. I do have the top 10 performers in everything. It's
You want to go
kind
through
of
that, Yuri?
yeah, I don't know if I should read all the top 10. I guess I'll just like read the top
Yeah,
because a lot of these guys are not like even first round pick uh quality. Left-handed grip, uh left-handed grip strength, Shane Van Sagi. He was number one. Simon Wang, who I think is like a second round pick type of guy. He was number two. Hayden Papanikis. Papanikis.
sure.
I think that's
Let's
how
go
you
with
say his
that.
name. He was third, and then Macheo Phillips was fourth. And then for the right-handed grip, Shane Versaghi, he was number one. Again, equal grip with both hands, which is like kind of
Crazy, yeah.
wild to see. Uh, and then Hayden Papakanekis.
Papakanekis? I don't know.
It might
Is
be
it is
Greek. It
it
might be
Greek? He might
Greek.
be Greek. If I
It
see the
sounds
name,
Greek.
I can get it out if I see the name.
Paupanke. No, I'm sorry. I couldn't even read out loud
Wow,
properly.
whatever, man. It's all good.
Anyway,
We can move on to the next one.
Peyton Kettles was third, and Jack Nesbitt, who is a potential, and then I guess Blake Fiddler, who might be a late first round pick. He was number five on the list. The aerobics fitness, the VO2 max, Anton Frondell took first overall, tied with Cole Reshney, which again, I really like Cole. I obviously love both of those players. Eric Nilsson, who's also a potential first round pick, he got third. Vaclav Nestrasil, he was fourth. And Matthew Guard was fifth. And then I guess I'll do this one because Jack Nesbitt is in there.
Sure, yeah.
Jackson Smith is number seven. Carter Klippenstein.
The
Um,
names are getting great.
yeah. Matuis Jan Kukacharik. I'm killing this. Is number nine. And then Brady Martin was 10. Not
Yeah.
that surprising.
For anybody complaining about the name pronunciation, I would implore
I
you to
am
try to
sorry.
pronounce these
Yeah.
names live as we're recording this. It's not
Yes.
easy, guys. So give Yuri a break, eh?
People can make fun of me. I don't care. Simon Wang got largest wingspan. Uh, Carter Amicio got second. Macheo Phillips again was third. Jacob Rombach was fourth. Jack Nesbitt with fifth, and Blake Fiddler was sixth. And he's obviously a big boy. So these are probably some of the bigger players in the draft. Then the horizontal jump. Now I do know that William Horcroft, who is son of Sean Horcroft, the former NHLer, I believe he broke the record for this with a
Yeah,
hundred.
really, really impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I would say he's going to already have like a benefit kind of around him just due to the fact his father played in the NHL. Like you could say that doesn't have an effect, but I mean, I think we all know that it helps players out when you
Well,
have
in the
talent like
fitness
that.
and the training, yeah, portion, yeah, of course. Yeah, so he got 100, just under 125 inches. The second was 118 by William Bell. Uh, Sean Burnhill it was also 118. Lyndon Lakovic, another guy who maybe could be available at 22 for the Flyers. He got 117. William Moore, 116 at fifth. And then Carter Klippenstein again. So this is like why Jet Luchenko was on a lot of these lists, and he was like top three in like almost everything. Roger McQueen was eighth on this list as well, with 112, which I guess is good. He can He can jump with that back. Vertical jump, Riker Lee took lead first place. Kieran Dervin was two. Malcolm Spence, another potential first round pick, most likely a first round pick, is third. William Bell, again, fourth. Bill Zanin, also a late first round pick potential. He was tied fifth. These are actually all pretty close. Milton Gastrin, another guy who could be a first round pick, was sixth. Simon Wang keeps coming up on this list, also clearly athletic guy, kid, was seventh. And then this is the no arm jump. The other one was just a vertical jump. This is like no arm jump, so you know a little harder. You can't gain momentum. William Horcroft again. Took the top place by a bit, by about 2 inches.
Yeah, he killed those Horkoff, like those two
Yeah,
specifically. So
strong legs, this kid. William Bell, he was second. Simon Wang third. Machado Phillips fourth. Kieran Dervin was fifth. And the bench press, Cameron Schmidt again, another first round pick option. He led the way. Adam Benek, he was second. Machado Phillips third. Cole McKinney was fourth. Shane Van Sage was fifth. Kieran Dervin was sixth. And just when you hear a lot of the stuff, remember that like Sam Bennett couldn't do a single pull up. Casey Middlestat couldn't do a pull up, stuff like that, right? Like just because a kid isn't the best at this at 17, 18 does not mean he is not athletic, right? These are all one percenters for their age group. This is the pro agility. Milton Gastrin was number one. William Moore was two. Sean Burnhill was three. William Horcroft was four. Charlton Terror oh my God, Terrathui, something like that, was
sure.
fifth. Jack Nesbitt was sixth. And then Benjamin Kindle was eighth. He's mid round to late first round pick. And the pro agility, Carter Klippenstein was number one. Carlton Therathway was two. Cameron Schmidt was three. Sean Burnhill was four. Milton Gastrom was five. Cole Reshney was six. William Horcroft was seven. And then pull-up competition, Bill Zanin dominated this. Well, dominated, but did one with 16. Shane Versaghi again. Clearly, he's like the Jet Luchenko of this one because he's in the top
In the
10 for
top
like
five
everything.
for a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah. Braden Coots also tied with Van Sagi. Also, potential mid to later first round pick. Could be around where the Flyers pick. Eric Nilsson, Sasha Boumediene was five. Cameron Reed was six. They're all, honestly, it's all 16, 15, 15, 15, and the rest are 14. So all pretty
Okay, cool.
close. And then the anaerobic fitness Wingate test. Sam Laurela, he got number one. Carter Klippenstein was two. Tommy Lafreniere was three. Wojtek Kahar was four.
I've heard a Wojtek name in there, a Vaclav. We're getting all the good like
Yeah, a lot
Euro
of great
names
names.
back
Yeah.
in. That's what we need here.
Carlos Handel was five. Cullen Potter, also a potential first round pick. Could be a guy the Flyers are definitely interested in. He's number six. Eric Nilsson was 10th on the list. Anton Fondell was ninth on this list. And then peak power output, Frondell was third on this list. I'm looking. Matthew Schaefer was fourth. Malcolm Spence was sixth. Cole McKinney was seven. Porter Martone was eighth. And then
Well, the top
fatigue.
guys in that one, yeah.
Yeah, fatigue index. Eric Nilsson, number one. Cameron Reed, two. Matuis Jan Kurchuk, however you say your name, I'm sorry. He was third. Hayden Papakinis. I can't do it. I'm sorry,
It's
dude.
all good, man. Don't worry
Um,
about it.
is number
Are
four.
we
Sam.
how many left to go
This is
through
the
here?
last one. Sam
Okay.
Lorla is fifth. Braden Coots is sixth. Justin Carbonneau is eighth on the list. Also, potentially like number 12 pick in the draft type of guy,
Yeah.
right outside the top 10. So essentially, those are the results. Not that big of a deal. I do have the list of players that the Flyers interviewed, which I think is a lot more interesting to us. And remember this, when you hear players interviewed, it doesn't necessarily mean he's a favorite. A lot of times it's who's available, right? That's one. The other thing is, do they have questions about them, right? They might not even interview a guy that they plan on taking because
Yeah.
maybe they're certain about him already, right? So some of this is to like clarify stuff. Maybe in some cases, if they're NCAA players, find out if they're actually going to sign with you, right? Prior. A guy like Cutter Gauthier has traumatized all of us. So they met with Michael Misa, James Hagens, Porter Martone, Caleb Denoyer, Anton Fondell, Roger McQueen, Victor Eklund, Jake O'Brien, Jackson Smith, Brady Martin, Radin Murka, Carter Bear, Justin Carbonu, Keishwan Atchinson, Cole Reshny, Malcolm Spence, Blake Fiddler, Cameron Reed, Colin Potter, Benjamin Kindell, Joshua Ravensburg, Sasha Boumadine, Jack Murtaugh. It might not be Murtaugh. It might be Murtaugh or something like that. William Moore, Shane Versaghi, Henry Brushwitz, Simon Wang, Cole McKinney, Riker Lee, Vaclav Nestrasil, William Horcroft, Matthew Gard, Carter Amicio, and Elijah Neuenschwander. I assume that's German. Neuenschwander.
Yeah, and then the dinners, right? That's the big one. Like they have dinners with Porter Martone, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien.
Yep.
So usually when you see teams bring players out to dinner, I mean, a lot of the time, like firstly, you could be a smokescreen, right? The Flyers could be taking guys out to
That's the other.
dinner to try to throw
Absolutely.
other teams off to be like, oh, well, if they're going out to dinner with this guy, they must want to take him. So
Yeah.
teams do shit like this all the time to kind of try to plant seeds to kind of, hey, maybe we're gonna take this guy or not, right? And then you can kind of maybe try to have teams forecast what's happening when something else might actually be happening. They might actually be trying to go with other guys potentially. So that's one thing. Or they could just really want to get to know these players better because they actually do really like their skill sets and they might be actually thinking about selecting them, right? A lot of scouts on the Flyers staff, obviously, so there could be potential scouts that favor some of these guys like a Martin over Martone or Martone over Martin or Brian over some of these guys. So that could be why they want to have the dinners to get some more clarification and follow up on the insight and the intel that their scouts have done all year with these players. So the combine's a fun time just because all these guys get together, they get to show their skills off, but just in terms of like the actual results, not always the biggest deal, especially in predicting futures, right? These are all like very young players, so the chances of them getting more physically strong and just growing into their bodies is definitely going to happen for all these guys. So it's just something to take with a grain of salt, but like Yariv said, maybe the players that they meet with, the players they take the dinner, that's something more I would say to read into versus the actual combine results. But it's fun to go over them and just kind of see where the players are landing in terms of that and all the tests. So
Yeah. So the other bit of news is Scott Wheeler came out with his recent mock draft, and he had the Flyers taking Hagens at sixth overall, which I think a lot of people would be absolutely thrilled about. We're going to talk about the scenarios that could lead to that. I will add as well that Kevin Kurz did. It was the Athletic, right, Vasily?
yeah, the Athletic did like an all writer, like all team type of like mock draft. And Kevin Kurz, the Flyers correspondent, obviously for the Athletic, he had Martone mocked to the Flyers at number 6. So pretty interesting. Like there's a ton of mocks out there. So we can kind of go through, I guess, what Wheeler had, and then maybe read out what the full Athletic mock was essentially.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to read out the scout quotes before? I think it would add good context that you sent me those scout quotes.
Yeah, sure. So basically there was like another article from the Athletic. So a lot of this stuff we're taking is from the Athletic. So shout out to them just for like the great content they have that we're kind of aggregating here. But yeah, so really what it is was there was an executive or like executives were interviewed and essentially Each executive and Corey Pronman kind of went through like certain thoughts on the draft. So I'll just like go through what some of the executives had to say here. So one of the executives stated Schaefer and Misa distinguished themselves from the pack. Then is Desnoyers and Fondell in a group with Martone on the edge of that group. I expect that combination of players will make up the first 5 picks. Another scout said it goes Schaefer, then O'Brien, and then Fondell. O'Brien is so talented, has a lot of upside and a lot of physical development left to go. So that's one scout having Jake O'Brien up in the top 3, which is pretty wild. Another scout was stating Schaefer's in a group by himself. Then I would have Desnoyers, Hagens, Martone, and Misa all closely bunched. My lean would be towards Desnoyers as the best of that bunch. He's a winner who does a lot of things very well. Yeah, so that's and then what some of the other executives, a couple more quotes here. So after Schaefer Misa, Brady Martin is right in the mix with that next group, may even be at the top. He looks very similar to what Sam Bennett has become. And then the final quote from another scout here: Schaefer and Misa are the clear top 2 players. After that, I would have Desnoyers, Frondell, O'Brien, and Martin in a close group together. So just based on all those quotes from executive scouts, like there's a lot of guys that are lower in the top 10 on some of these mocks and guys that are perceived to not even be close to the top 5 in the top 5. So suffice to say, right, I think it's a great indication that really nobody knows what's going to happen here.
Yes.
And I think this draft specifically, if you look at the top 10 for this draft in the past couple, it's really murky, right? Versus some of the other top 5s where a lot of it was more defined, I would say.
Yeah, and we just saw a ranking. It was Byron, I forget his last name on Twitter. He had Frondell's first overall above
That wasn't like
everybody.
a mock, but it was more just like what he thinks of the talent of these players.
But
So
again, but that still matter. That matters to me more than a mock because you
I
have no
agree. Yeah.
idea what these teams are actually thinking outside of like if you're, I guess maybe Proneman, Button, and McKenzie, right? Like most people don't know what GMs are thinking or talking to scouts. It's like just their opinions. But there are scenarios here where James Hagens ends up being the guy who drops the 6. Now, we have heard rumors that Utah is interested in Martin, right? And again, that would take him up at 4th. We've seen this kind of every year. Like Beckett Seneca was a guy that we saw really rise up. I think he was supposed to go at 8th, and he ended up going at 3rd
Yeah, even
overall in the
some mocks
draft.
had him like 15th, 16th last year, like in the teens, and he ended up
Right,
going 3. It was a huge surprise.
right.
Um, just to go over Wheeler's like
Oh
mock,
yeah, please do. Sorry.
he had Schaefer first, Misa second. That's kind of the chalk. Like most mocks you see, most analysis that you see right now, you have Schaefer, Misa 1, 2. And after that's where the murkiness comes. So after Schaefer first, Misa 2, Wheeler's got Frondell 3, Desnoyers 4, Martone 5, James Hagens at 6. And then his commentary on Hagens at 6 going to the Flyers is if Hagens gets here, I think the Flyers like him and would consider taking him. Same goes for Desnoyers, whose well-rounded game and smarts could really support and complement Mitchkov, but Desnoyers isn't going to be there if Hagens isn't. But Desnoyers isn't going to be there. And then he states, if Hagens isn't, I think they lean Martin over Jake O'Brien here in terms of other centers. The pull of a center and a player like Martin is real in this range. So that's Wheeler's mock, but obviously a lot of other mocks going around too, just in terms of the draft right now. Like, what do you think of that like layout that he kind of put out there in his mock draft, Yuriv?
I think Martin is a little bit of a smokescreen by the Flyers. I look at their last several years of drafting under Flair, and they recognize what their biggest is. And I can't see them looking at a guy like Jake O'Brien and assuming that he isn't their need either. Like I get the appeal of Martin, and we're gonna have Steve to talk, and Steve is high on Martin as well. But again, you just look at his type of game. It's not that we don't need that type of player. We do. It's just the players who can potentially turn into 80, 90 point players in the league, 100 point players. I don't know if Martin necessarily is that guy where I'm like, he's extremely valuable player, but it's not 100% what we need at the moment. It's like something that a playoff team would be like, we need a guy like this in our lineup, right? The same
Yeah.
appeal that Sam Bennett has. It's not that we can't use Bennett and that he wouldn't be extremely helpful. It's that we lack an elite playmaker to complement Mitchkov. And when you look at the fact they took Luchenko last year, who's like a playmaker that might be a number 1 center that I still believe has that potential. I think they would want to double it up. So like I think it depends how things fall for us, but
Oh
I
yeah.
I also have a very hard time believing the Flyers would pass up on Martone, just because he is a right winger and not a center. I think we do prioritize center, but there's also best player available, right? And if you don't get that guy that you wanted, like a Hagens, Fondell, or Denoyer, right? Like you
Yeah.
might not be like, oh, well, Martin is the guy. You might be like, no, we're gonna go with Porter Martone. The same way, like if Mitchkov was available for us at 7, we're taking him. If he wasn't, we would go
Well,
with
yeah.
Brian Leonard, right?
He's BPA at that point, right? And I think you have to factor in too, like Martone was just at the World Championships, looked pretty good with NHL players. He didn't look out of place or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you got to take into consideration. Um, Now we can just look at too, like the full athletic staff mock. So what the full staff had mocked, and this is kind of it seems to be more in line with like what was coming out before, like crazy mock draft season and like Corey Pronman's Confidential with those executive quotes we were talking about that like had Brady Martin in the top 3 and Jake O'Brien. And you have to factor in, right? Like they're talking to executives from different teams. So it's all going to be different opinions and things like that. So like there could be one team that has Jake O'Brien in the top 3, but that doesn't necessarily mean that 29 other teams are like, no, we do not, right? So just take it with a grain of salt. So we just mentioned it because it's something interesting that we kind of found interesting. But the athletic full staff mock went Schaefer Misa, which pretty similar to Wheeler's, right? That's like the chalk picks there. And you have Frondell, Desnoyers at 4, Hagens at 5. So all 3 centers taken 3, 4, 5. Then Martone mocked by Kevin Kurz to the Flyers at 6. And that's super interesting. Like for me, I think if Martone's still there, like let's say you lose out on Frondell, Desnoyers, Hagens, those are kind of like your top tier center options. I think if those center options are gone and then you're looking at like Martone or Jake O'Brien, I think you have to go for Martone just because he's clear and cut the best player between those two. And you have to factor in that even though he's a little bit older, because that's always getting brought up, right? Like the age of these draft eligible prospects, despite him being older, he outproduced some guys that even got drafted last season, right? Like he outproduced Beckett Seneke. He outproduced some other guys that were in his draft or drafted in a previous year that he's even technically younger than. So you have to look at that and say like, you would probably be making a big mistake to be going, need over best player available in a situation like that if it's Martone available to you there. So
Yeah, but we do see size is a premium. So like regardless of what fans think about stuff, like guys who are smaller, and that's Hagens included, they
yeah,
will be docked a point for not being as big and strong. And yes, under 6 foot is considered small in the NHL. We might not consider it small as an average person, but again, look at these playoffs. Look at when physicality ramps up. It's a reality, and it doesn't mean that Hagens drops for me, and he has the skill set to offset that. But there's I forget his name. Man, I can't remember his name, but there's a guy who's a high scorer and he's 5'7" in this draft. It's like, dude, he's not going in the first round pick. Like he's a second. He's slated to be like a mid to late first round pick. I'm like, that guy's going in the second round.
yeah.
I think about Calder Yamamoto, who was taken high. He was 5'7", high skill player, didn't make it in the NHL. That means they can't even play him in a bottom 6 role in the league, right? So
The
the
Cameron Schmidt you're talking about,
Cameron
you read?
Schmidt, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he doesn't have the ability to play a bottom 6 role theoretically in the NHL in a GM's mind, right? So some guys are just going to be knocked unfairly just because of where they are physically today. And I think that's going to matter. And I look at a guy like Radim Murka, who's a defenseman, who's 6'6", extremely mobile, has a two-way ability. That guy might sneak into the top 5 also. Like, I know that nobody has thought that, but I'm like, there are not a lot of 6'6" guys who projected to be top 3 defensemen in the NHL, or
And
maybe he's
he's already 216 pounds
right.
too, so
A
like
lot
he's
of
gonna
times
fill
these
out even
guys,
more.
that's why you keep seeing them rise in all these mock drafts, because you look at that what he brings, the intangibles plus the on ice skill. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of times those guys just get taken in the top five because they're like, we don't find defensemen like this often, right?
And
That
we
have
think we can develop him too. You have to factor in
right,
like you have a Nashville there who's really good with defensemen.
exactly.
Maybe they are like, hey, we can make this guy into a top pair guy for us. We know that we can do it just with our
They
staff and our
they've
development team, right?
and
So
they've drafted centers the past 2 years. So they might be in their mind like, oh, well, we have centers that we think like we might not think of them that
we
way, but
need, yeah, we need a new defenseman to potentially be a top pair option for us. We think this
yeah.
guy could do it. You never
I
know,
I
right?
do think Utah's lineup with having, Logan Cooley and what's the American's name?
Clayton Keller?
Clayton Keller, thank you. They might, they look at Hagens. I don't think they're that interested in Hagens, right? A lot of people have said that. I think they're more interested in like Fondell,
Yeah.
right? Denoyer. They probably would be more interested in a Porter Martone, where they're like, yeah, he's not a center, but we don't desperately need a center,
Yeah.
right?
We have centers. We need wing depth. So
Yeah,
why
we
not kind of
and
go for him?
and we like size, right? We need size right now. The Flyers, while they are focused on size, again, their number one thing is adding skill.
Yeah.
So that's where a guy I believe, and I look at Barry Trotz. I don't think Barry Trotz is gonna like look at Hagens and be like, oh, he can't fit in here. But I don't think he's gonna prioritize Hagens' skill set over a guy like Porter Martone or a guy like Denoyer, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's all about the team fit sometimes too. Like obviously you look at best player available, but if teams like you said have drafted centers the last 2 years, they might not necessarily want to take a center to your point,
yeah,
right? So
and a lot of these teams are going to prioritize size probably over the Flyers with that top six pick
well, I think the Flyers
because
at
of
this
what they've
point,
gotten.
yeah, I think the Flyers at this point, like you need to prioritize talent. Like you need to add another high end talent to, a really talented player, obviously a Matvey Mitchkov, but you do need like another prospect that's projecting to be a top line level talent. They have a Lachenko who's kind of an in betweener between like a second first line.
And we're not
But
entirely sure. Yeah.
yeah, right. And that's why this is such an important pick for Philadelphia because you don't have anybody in the prospect pool right now that you can easily point to and say, yes, they are either a top line level defensive talent or, top line level forward type talent. So that's why number 6 becomes so important here, just due to the fact that there are guys that are going to be in and around 6 that might fit that mold, whether it's going to be a center, whether it's going to be a winger like a Martone. And then just like, because we're going through all the mocks, right? Like the other mock, or not mock, but the other um, kind of list we were talking about was from Hockey Prospecting. So shout out to Byron Bader.
That's it.
He mentioned to us, we kind of went into gone to a back and forth with him that this is not a mock. This is just what Prospecting thinks, the talent evaluation is in terms of like who's the best player, right, out of the top 32 here. So we can just go through the top 10 because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So essentially what it is they have Anton Frondell as going number 1 or as the most talented player. Matthew Schaefer as the second most talented. Michael Misa 3, James Hagens 4, Jake O'Brien 5, Desnoyers 6, Martone 7, Radom Merkita as 8, Jackson Smith 9, and Benjamin Kindell as 10. So that's a real interesting list to me because you have Roger McQueen all the way down at 18. You have Frondell at 1, and we've seen some mocks where Frondell's like 9 or like 8 or not even
I've
in the
seen him
top
as
5
low as
anymore.
18.
Yeah, which is kind of wild. Like, I mean, personally, like for the Flyers, I think you obviously are looking at the center depth problem. They probably do need a center, but like we said, I would be open to Martone. For me, it's still nothing's really changed for me. Like I think my ideal guy is Frondell at 6. If Frondell's there, I think that's the guy for me. Just based on what Steve said and his kind of
I'm right there
confidence.
with you. Right there
Uh,
with you, dude.
so for me, my top 3 is Frondell right now, Hagens after him, and then probably after Hagens it would be Martone.
For for me,
So
well, I think that's very rational. For me, it's like I have Hagens and Frondell in the same tier, but they're different type of players in my
yeah,
mind. But I'm
definitely.
happy with either one of them. Like both of them, I'm writing home about. Like I love both players for different reasons.
I agree. Yeah.
And then I have like Denoyer with Martone as like that next tier for me. And then I'm still very interested in O'Brien. And I'm not down on Martin because if we weren't taking a player at top six, like, and if it was like the 12th pick in the draft,
He'd
I
be
would
a great now like 10 to 12 or
right.
13 type of
I'd
pick.
be
Yeah.
very high on Martin because I'm like, yeah, I love those type of
I
players.
think it's a reach at 6 though if they're going to
Right.
take him. So
That's what it seems to me. But sometimes that's what
especially with the
happens.
guys that might be on the board, right? That's where it looks like it's a reach. Like, let's say James Hagens is there and the Flyers take Brady Martin, like that's going to be a huge deal, right? Like
Yes.
I don't think that's a selection to make if that's
I don't think they
how
would
the
do that.
board ends up falling, right? But that's what people, are kind of scared of, something like that. So we'll see, but I think at least for me, like I think the Flyers need to prioritize talent here. So if you do have guys like Fondell, like Hagens available that were, projected to be top 5 even last year before this draft, and all these like kind of mocks are coming out, I say you kind of have to go with those guys. Desnoyers is a guy that's been rising, and I do see the reasons why people like him and just the work ethic and just the two-way
I think
game, but
that's
also the
Nashville's
scoring,
top
but all
guy.
the scoring prowess too added in. Like my thing with him is just like I look at all the other players that are like mocked here. He's really that only guy that's from the QMJHL that's in the top 10. And not to say that the QMJHL isn't a great league, but I just always have questions about that league compared to the others. So that's where my hesitancy kind of starts. Just the production out of that league specifically. So we'll see what happens, but I think, we kind of wanted to bring up all these mocks and just this, draft information just because it makes for interesting conversation, obviously going into and leading into it. But I think a big point of this all, at least for me, is it's really hard to determine who's going where, what's going to happen on draft night. I think this proves that even more, especially going to those executive quotes. It just kind of like signifies how murky the waters really are and how things can really change. Even on the draft night itself, right? Like one team might like a certain player, he's gone. That might change their whole approach, right? So that could happen for multiple teams on draft night. So we'll see where it falls. But I think the main thing is we all don't really know what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
for most of these drafts, you're really not going to find out who is that true top 5 until years afterwards. I would say one caveat though, especially with guys like falling, like you look at a James Hagens who was projected to be number 1 before this was kind of before this year even happened, right? Like he was, looked at as potentially being a number 1 pick here. For him to fall to a 6 or 7, like no brainer for the Flyers if he is
Yeah.
there.
I think I think that class of the three centermen that we talked about, I think that's what the Flyers are hoping for is one of Hagens, Frondell, or Denoyer make it. And
Yeah.
I really think Utah is probably going to go off the board. It's not the first time that the Coyotes went off the board, right? It's also not the first time we've seen players go off the board, right? And again, a
Yeah.
lot of times it's due to size. So be aware of that. And that could happen. And I don't think the Flyers are going to look at, I could be 100% wrong about this, are going to look at Brady Martin when they compare him to like Porter Martone and the other guys who are higher point producers and necessarily go, oh, we need the physicality above that skill.
Yeah.
Um, which again, I still think that from what I'm seeing, Martin is like a top 6 forward candidate, but he doesn't necessarily like look like a top line player. But maybe that's wrong too. I don't know Martin that well. He just looks more like a north south player, not as dynamic as the other players available at that slot. So we will see. And after we talk to Steve next week, we'll probably have a better idea of what we want. Though I don't think our opinions on Frondell and Hagens are going to change much.
No, definitely not.
Those are the two wishes I think we have, and it's very realistic that we could get Hagens. I think because Frondell from the combine pointed out to be like just under 200 pounds and almost 6'2". So you look at his size and the physicality. I was like, I don't think he'll be there.
And the
But
scoring prowess in the season he had.
right,
So
exactly. Where Hagens is a little smaller, so that could
can see
happen.
the smaller guys fall. I just look at like not to say that they're the same type of player because I think that Hagen's ultimately is going to have more upside than a Shane Wright, but I just think back to Shane Wright falling, kind of being like, oh, he was projected to be number 1, ended up falling. I don't know if the same thing's going to happen here with Hagens, but it's a similar type of story and a
Yeah,
narrative. So
but they were also right about Wright.
yeah,
He wasn't first overall pick caliber. That's why I always take all these lists with a huge grain of salt, and I just trust that our scouts know the right. Even if they take Martin, and that's not the guy I wanted, I'm gonna look into Martin heavily from there. That's what I'm gonna
Well,
do.
they're the ones doing the research all year, watching these guys multiple times in person, or at least you hope that's what the scouting staff is going there and
Yeah,
doing. That's what they should be doing. But yeah, they're the experts, right? Like we're just kind of watching video and kind of formulating our opinion. So I wouldn't say take things that we say with a grain of salt in terms of
of
like
course.
player skill sets and things like that.
Yeah,
Like we're not the experts.
not even close.
That's why we
Yeah.
get Steve on, but we love to have these conversations and talk about the hypotheticals because the mocks and just where everybody's projected to go, it just makes it more fun. So
Yeah, I also wanted to mention this. There's a lot of mocks that have the Flyers taking Ravensburgen, the top goaltender in the first round.
never
Sometimes,
know. Yeah.
well, I think the odds of them drafting a goalie in the first round is very slim.
I'd say second round, just all the second round picks they
Right,
have.
right, exactly. Typically, goalies are not taken, even if he does go in the first round. I just can't see the Flyers looking at their need as an organization and be like, oh, we're going to grab a goalie. One, they're
Yeah.
a larger risk from their projection. We've seen that over and over and over again. And with so many second round picks available, like Vasily was saying, they can grab the second best
Yeah.
goalie
Look at
prospect or the
Bjarnason
third.
versus Zavragin. Look at Bjarnason versus Zavragin. I remember when that happened when I was on the draft floor and they took Bjarnason and then Zavragin back to back. You have to think about it this way, right? Bjarnason at the time was touted to be the best goaltending prospect during that draft on the floor. What's happened since that? Zavragin has emerged
Right.
and the Flyers took him in a later round. So point being, it's hard to project with goalies, right? You might have Ravensburgen being the favorite right now, but there could be another goalie in the draft that has is very close in terms of the talent and might end up surpassing him down the line. So I think, right, like if you're going to pick a goalie, I personally think doing it in the first round with the first round pick, unless it's like a shoe in, like it's like a Carey Price type or something like that. And there's like a huge like pedigree of success. But if there's not something like that, which with Ravensburgen there really isn't here, I would say you're safer, and the likelihood of you hitting in the second or third round pick with a goalie is probably just as high as potentially the first, right?
Yeah.
So
And also throw on top, you look at the organizational depth with having two very good young goalie prospects. That's not a top need for the Flyers.
yeah,
So they're while they do want to add, believe they do want to add another goalie prospect, they're going to go for their top needs, which are defenseman, center, and if they can add talent, right? So that I think they might even move up in the draft to try to grab, like if they end up taking Martone, they might try to move up in the draft to grab one of their top centers on their list,
yeah.
right? To kind of compensate for that. And then I think, I see them drafting 6 of the 7 picks they have in the first 2 rounds and trying to use one of those second round picks to move up, whether it be the second first or the third first, and try to move up from there. They might do that. But I think ultimately a goalie is going to go in the second round, and they will take a goalie in the second round. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think the likelihood is very high that they grab a goaltender in the second round with, as of right now, 4 second round picks, which is not that far from their late first round pick. So, but we'll see. We'll see what they do. I just think it's unlikely. I think their depth at goaltender at the prospect level is high enough that they don't need to take a goalie in the first round and will opt to go for skaters instead. All right. Just want to remind everyone to please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notification, get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow if you can. That is the best way to support this show. Another topic I wanted to bring up, which is Flyers related, and we'll go into rumors after this. Ryan Ellis' contract. He's got 2 years left on his contract.
6.5 million cap, right?
Yes. And real actual dollars is 5.5 this year and 4.5 next year. I think this could be the last year that Ellis is on this team. I think they will either try to move, because with the cap going up, there will be teams trying to hit the bottom, right?
The floor, yeah,
The
exactly.
floor. So maybe that $4.5 million, which is an actual 6.25 against the cap, maybe there's a team that's willing to grab that cap space.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
And the other option is buying him out. which 4.25 spread over. Now they might not need to anyway, because like what I said, they're going to have an absurd amount of cap space. Um, Even if they do not even LTIR Ryan Ellis. But I do look at it, it's finally kind of coming to the end of that contract, and they might need the contract spot more than they need the cap space as well. So I am like kind of looking at that. I was kind of thinking about it today, so I threw it on our topic list. I'm like, it's kind of an afterthought of where we are right now, but I wanted to throw it by you, Vasily, and see what you thought.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we see these types of deals happen all the time throughout the NHL where like there's high money contracts that were LTIR'd. And then once you get to the end of the contract, the money does not actually match the actual, average annual value in terms of the cap hit. So to your point, right? Like you're going to have the actual salary be 4.5 mil, and you're going to have the cap hit be 6.5. Maybe there's a team willing to be like, hey, like we are we're 6 million below the cap right now. We don't want to pay a guy $6 million or pay three players $6 million. We don't even have the contract slots potentially to pay three guys 2 million each to get up to that 6 million value. Let's trade for this deal. We don't have to pay this guy the actual amount. We can get to our floor. So it's interesting. I think it's possible. It just depends on what team's going to be in that scenario, perhaps, right? So
Yeah.
if there's a team that might be in that situation, maybe you see Briere and the staff kind of pounce on that. Or it could be a scenario like a lot of these times, right? It's like almost you're doing them a favor to get them to the cap floor for something else in return. Where the Flyers, they might not get really anything. It's more just like, hey,
Just
we
move
did
the
you this
money.
favor, move the money. Maybe down the line there might be some sort of like future consideration, some sort of draft
Eh,
pick or something
I
weird.
think
But
most likely it's just going to be future considerations. You get the cap hit, you get the cap hit off of us.
yeah,
Call it even, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, but I
interesting
could,
thought though.
yeah,
Yeah,
I could see the Flyers. Again, this is very early, but this could be a conversation for next offseason. We tend to do that if you guys have been listening. We're usually like a year ahead of everything. And I like to stare at the financials of the team. So that is a big one for me where I could see if the Flyers are ramping up on UFAs and let's say, God willing, they sign a Connor McDavid or whatever. They could opt to try to move Ryan Ellis's contract. They might have to even trade a pick away to get rid of the money. But I do see a scenario where the Flyers consider that because it's just an on paper move and Ellis doesn't have to go anywhere. His career is over. But
yeah.
easy for a team to bury that contract if they need to. And they could get an asset out of it if the Flyers are desperate. All right, let's talk about some rumors. So there are rumors right now that Vegas is shopping William Karlsson.
Yeah, I have some new info too since
Go ahead and then
we
take
added this.
take the
So
lead.
there has been rumors that they were shopping Karlsson. The rumors were let me see where they were coming out of here. I can't remember the original source. Let me just find that here. Yeah, so a lot of just rumors on Twitter. Things like that, like an account called NHL Trade Alert. Elliot Friedman as well on 32 Thoughts said that William Karlsson could potentially be available. But then in a recent report here from Danny Webster, and Danny is from the Las Vegas Review Journal. This is as early as 1:09 p.m. He stated in the article that the Golden Knights will explore different ways to improve their team this offseason after losing to the Edmonton Oilers in the second round of the playoffs. One way they will not do that is by trading center William Karlsson.
Okay.
The original Misfits name has surfaced in trade rumors recently, given the Knights would need to clear cap space if they want to make a splash when free agency begins July 1st. Moving Karlsson, was rumored to try to help potentially Vegas pursue free agents like a Mitch Marner or even a Sam Bennett. One source that Webster reached out to said there's no chance in the world Karlsson is traded. Another said there's zero chance the Knights would move him. So this is another perfect example that we see all the time online around free agency, around the draft. Always rumors that come out that actually are never true, but things always get spread during this time. Teams talk. Maybe there was a potential idea, but maybe Vegas was like, "Hey, actually, after we thought about it, we're not going to trade this guy because why would you, right? Like if you look at Karlsson and the way he's played the last couple of seasons, 30 goals last season." Or not this past season, but the season before, 30 goals. And then this season he was injured, but he put a decent like point percentage up in 53 games. I think he had like 29 points in 53 games. So when I saw Vegas looking to move him, I was kind of puzzled, and I was like, hey, this would be a great type of stopgap center for the Flyers. You know, you're looking to draft potentially a young center in this draft. You don't want to rush him into the NHL. You don't want to rush Jetlachenko into the NHL. You know, a guy like Karlsson could be a great stopgap, but it seems like there's not a lot of merits to that rumor just based off the article that I just kind of read out for you all. So
Well,
it was interesting, but we'll kind of see what happens. But it's not surprising to me that something like this is like, you know, it's something that Vegas doesn't really want to look into doing. So
yeah, I think the reason it comes up, it's a down year, right? So people jump on that, and the fact that he's a
cap
UF,
space
he's
if
a
needed, yeah.
yeah, but he's a UFA in 2027. So they could be like thinking ahead. Maybe this is something Vegas would consider later. But
Yeah.
he's only 26 years old, so it's not like, he's an old man or whatever. And he's clearly a very valuable player. I also don't think he's the type of player that the Flyers are going to look to bring over. I know people want to jump on all these names, but the reality is, if you listen to what the Flyers said, they are not trying to bring in guys who will play like on their second line necessarily, on a long-term deal at least. If they're bringing like, and a guy like Karlsson would require a long-term deal. He's 26 years old. They're most likely looking for stopgaps in that area, in the second line area, or guys who
Yeah.
they would covet as a top line player, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also just to correct you, he's actually 32, so
Oh, why do I
he,
have
he's a little
26?
older, but
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I had it. Why do I see 26 years old here? Oh
yeah, I don't
yeah,
know.
UFA at 34. You're right. I read this wrong. So he's even worse. So he's older. I thought it sounded weird that he was 26. Even older, so it's like, yeah, maybe you could grab him for at that, I would correct what I'm saying. Then at that point, if he's older, player of that caliber, yeah, I would consider bringing him
That was
in
kind
as
of
a stopgap.
why that was kind of why I thought it was interesting. Like when I saw the initial reports on Twitter, just of like the rumors from like Friedman and Jay Fresh and all these different outlets kind of being like, oh, there's rumors Vegas is gonna potentially shop Karlsson. I was like, hey, he's 32, 2 seasons left, 5.9 mil. It's like a perfect stopgap center if you need a center and you don't think one of your young guys is gonna make it
Well,
in the next two seasons. But
mhm,
now with this kind of being refuted, it's a moot point. But
yeah.
either way, it's good that we have some breaking news to kind of call that out here.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
The other one that's come up is Mason Marchment. And per Elliot Friedman in general, he was saying that the Stars are trying to open up cap space. There is the rumor, and this sounded ridiculous from Elliot, and I'm not saying he's full of shit, but it just sounds ridiculous that they are considering moving
Robertson.
Robertson to make space for Granlund.
Yeah, that was crazy. But so this is how I put that all together. They had that Granlund Hintz Rantanen line. That was the Finland line, right? During the
Yeah.
playoffs. I imagine Hintz and Rantanen being Finnish, love playing with Granlund and just that whole Finnish connection they have going on. But to trade a young like superstar like Robertson who has 100-point potential every season for like the next 4 or 5 seasons to sign Granlund, like cap wise, talent wise, asset like
Management
the way,
wise.
yeah, asset management wise just doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all.
Yeah.
Because you look at the age, right? Like Robertson's what, like 25, 26, or he's 25 years old. Like he's
Yeah.
just entering his, like that's the thing to me. Like this guy had 100 points 2 seasons ago at 23, not even close to his prime. So this guy's just entering his prime and already has a 103 point or 109 point season. So that potentially spells out to me that he could get even better. He could have up to 130 points in a season because he had 109 points at 23 years old, right? So for you to trade that guy going into his prime, it's wild to me unless you are trading him and getting like Mitch Marner or something to replace him.
Even so, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I
As
don't,
to
I don't,
try,
I wouldn't make the move. And then you look at Granlund, right? Like Granlund is in his 30s, definitely. I don't know the exact age. I'm gonna pull it up right
I
now
think he's
here.
32, if I remember.
But yeah, like you look at Mikhail Granlund, yeah, he's 33 years old.
Yeah.
The most points he's ever had in a season is 69 points, and that was in 2017, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And like he had a real good season this season with Dallas and San Jose like mix. Like he had 22 goals, really good playoffs with them, 10 points in 18 games, but to trade Robertson to justify Granlund, not a lot of doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And to get into the Marchment rumor is reported by Dave Pagnotta out of the fourth period. He stated that the Stars are indeed taking calls on Robertson, but GM Jim Nill is hesitant to move him as they look to free up some cap space. I'm told they're shopping Mason Marchment, who's entering the final year of his contract.
That one makes
Then
more sense.
yeah, and then Anthony DeMarco from Daily Faceoff, formerly the fourth period, quoted his old coworker Pagnotta and stated, "I've heard Marchman is a guy Philly likes. If they're looking to add size up front, which I believe they are, I wonder if they pursue him." So that I mean, maybe it's an interesting rumor. I mean, he does have size, Marchment. I just wonder, like, he's another type of middle six guy.
Uh,
Who are you moving out to bring him in and why? Like the only thing that makes sense is like, hey, maybe this is the thought process. If you're the Flyers, you sign Shabanov. Maybe you're thinking, okay, now we have Shabanov, he's 5'8". Now we have Bobby Brink, he's 5'8". We have Travis Konechny, who's a smaller winger. We have Mitchkov, too many small guys. They're thinking, okay, we get Shabanov in, we trade Brink, we bring in Marchment. He's obviously a bigger guy at 6'5", 212. In terms of production, right? Two back-to-back 22-goal seasons. So he is a 20-goal scorer, but he's still a guy you're not going to have really in your top six, right? He's going to be more of like a third line, borderline maybe top six winger. But he's also,
Center. He's a center, isn't he?
no, he's a left winger.
Oh,
But he's also at 29 years
same
old.
as
So
both.
it's not like you're bringing in like a young guy here, right? Like he's 29. He might just be exiting his prime as a bigger guy where you're like, you see those bigger guys tend to decline after age 30, perhaps. So you might be getting him on the back end where really he's going
Well,
into a bit
maybe
of
they
a bit of a decline. But
maybe to the Flyers' credit, they could see that as a stopgap. We'll be like, okay, well, for now, we'll roll with. I look at Marchment and I'm like, maybe that's a third. I think the Flyers would bring him in to play center personally because
maybe
he plays both. So maybe they're thinking, oh, we'll keep Coots. They just locked up, Cates. Luchenko's a question mark, and it's like, oh, maybe we throw Marchman in there, and he balances it out, but he's 30 years old this time next season. He'll be here for a year or two, and we can catch a team who's just trying to get
could
rid
be
of cap
another
space, so
stopgap.
we don't
Yeah.
have to pay a lot for him, right? Maybe it's going to be cheap because we're going to take the whole cap hit, so they don't really get much because they want the cap space.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. They want the relief to make a move somewhere else. No,
right.
totally.
But again, I completely agree with you. I'm like, I'm not saying the Flyers won't add anybody, but I look at this type of player. I'm like, okay, but you already have Coots and you
Yeah.
already have
And
Cates who are,
And it's his last season, right? Like this is the final year of his deal, so you're really only getting him for the next season. So
well,
it's a
that's why I thought it
1 year
would be cheap.
stopgap.
That's why I
Yeah,
thought it would be. If he's cheap, I'm all for it. But I just don't see on paper how this is going to be like our guy,
no,
that we're
yeah.
bringing in, unless
I would
they plan
suspect.
on removing somebody from the
I
lineup
would
too.
suspect if they're going to try to add a center, it would be a guy that is here in a more long-term capacity versus like a 1 year stopgap. Unless, like you said, they think that their younger guys are really going to jump into things like, let's say you get a top center at 6 out of the prospect pool that's kind of mocked there for the top 10. Let's say you get Luchenko into the NHL and he hits the ground running. Maybe they're like, hey, we only need the 1 year stopgap. Who knows? But I just think it's one where like, unless it's super cheap, it doesn't make a ton of sense. Um, and or you think you're going to get him and then you can flip him at the deadline because it's a 1 year deal and you can kind of recoup more value
Sure,
perhaps. Who knows?
sure. And
But
you're coming from a position of strength where you don't even care if you let him walk.
yeah,
You know
because
what
you
I
might have
mean?
traded for him for nothing, right? Like you might have been like, hey, we'll take him off your hands for like a third round pick or something, back to back 22 goal scorer. Sure, 1 season left, you get your cap space. We can trade him for a first rounder at the deadline if he has
Right.
another 20-goal season.
Yeah.
So
That's the only way it really makes sense to me because I don't I see like William Karlsson even above him because at least like Karlsson's definitively a center.
yeah, that's
But
that's why I thought that made more sense. But
yeah.
then when we saw the report get refuted, I'm like, hey, I guess not.
Well, you see why the Flyers are probably having all these conversations. It doesn't mean that they're jumping on these deals though.
No.
Just because they're exploring stuff and talking
This is
stuff
the
with
time.
teams.
Well, this is why rumors are coming out so rampantly right now, right? You have two teams in the Stanley Cup final. The rest of the league is sitting around waiting for this draft. They're all together at the combine. You think all these rumors don't come out of the combine where all these teams are together and that's why all these insiders are hearing all this stuff. All these conversations are likely happening, but they're just that, right? Conversations. These conversations are what lead to rumors, but doesn't necessarily mean these trades are going to end up
Yeah,
happening.
or they're close so they can actually find a deal. It also could be predicated on the Flyers making another deal. Like if they are shopping a Bobby Brink, they're like, okay, well, if we move Bobby Brink, we can slide Forrester back over to the right side. We put Marchment on the left side, right? Like there are all kinds of things that could come into place here.
Lots of
I like
hypotheticals
him
too.
again, just like Karlsson. Like I like him. I want him, on the team, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to find a way where it actually works where the Flyers currently are today. If they were a Stanley Cup contender, I'd be like, yeah, add the Marchman and we'll worry about the rest of it later. But just where they are, I don't think they're trying to like corner themselves and use their assets up on something that's not going to stay for the next 3, 4 years. I think everything this offseason is setting up next offseason. That's my opinion. So we'll see. I also want to talk about the Nicholas Hague rumors. There was a lot of talk that, like, oh, Vegas was looking for a winger in that trade, and it was assumed that it'd be Bobby Brink. I don't think it was Bobby Brink. I think the Flyers offered them Zamula. I think the Flyers literally were looking at their D. Maybe it was even Andre. They were looking at their D. They're like,
We need a
we
bigger defenseman than these
right.
guys, yeah.
You
Or
need to
somebody who's more physical in general, because the Mula does have the height, just not the physicality,
Yeah,
right?
and they're both much cheaper than what Hague will demand. He'll probably demand, my guess is like around 3.5 million
Yeah.
a
And
year.
Vegas is trying to make a splash, right? To that article's point, they want to clear some sort of space
Yeah,
in some way. So
yeah. So, and I imagine that was probably turned down by Vegas because that's
yeah.
probably not exactly what they were looking for. But I think the Flyers made an offer. And again, I say this all the time. People online, most of the offers I see that the Flyers are offering are to lose a trade. I think the Flyers are going into trades trying to win the trade. Like you want to catch teams in a desperate position where you walk away feeling good. If you break even with the other team, that's a normal trade. That's great. But if you walk away and you overpay for a guy that's not like a franchise player, that it's a mistake. So I just see the Flyers are exploring options and see where they can walk away with a win. And we know that Danny does this, right? He did this with Provorov. He did this with Lawton, right? He's doing all of these conversations where he can walk away when he moves that asset. We can retrospectively look back and it's a win. Even the Frost and Farabee trade. Yes, we lost the better players in that trade, but we got the assets and we walked away with the cap space. So for us, it's a win, right?
Yep.
No matter what happened, it's a win. And we knew that both of those players were not going to be part of the future, especially Frost. And I kept talking about it. And this is the one thing where I do think about trading Brink. It's not because I don't think Brink is awesome, it's because he's got a contract that's going to come up. Same with
Yeah.
Zamula. He's not going to be locked up for very long. And unless they see them as they will be here for the foreseeable future, and again, if you're trying to get bigger, Brink doesn't fall under that. And we know Zamula doesn't necessarily fit as a you know for sure defenseman on this team with a guy like Andre. You know, it kind of makes
Yeah.
sense. So you got some
So
breaking news
I
again.
got some more other breaking news on Nicholas Hague. So lots of stuff's happening while we're recording.
Is
It's not really
is
the
he
fact that he's
already
been
traded?
no, he hasn't been traded, but it's just refuting once again the rumor that we're talking about here. So Kevin Kurz reported this is 2 hours ago on Twitter, so 4:16 p.m. The Flyers' rumored interest in Vegas's defenseman Nicholas Hague was pretty strongly denied to me from a team source. I do not expect that to happen. Carry on. So Kevin is plugged in. We all know that. This kind of proves our point that a lot of the times these rumors, they're not coming always from reliable sources. It also could be coming from Vegas's side of things when they just had a conversation, not necessarily the Flyers side of things. The last few days before this, we were seeing stuff about Hague and the Flyers were not linked anymore, so I kind of figured he was off the radar. Montreal, I think, was rumored now potentially
I
as the
saw
front
that.
runner. So we'll see what happens, but it doesn't look like Hague is a guy that's imminently to the Flyers like it was so perceived to be 2 or 3 weeks ago. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't buy it too much, to be honest with you. Again, when I look at stuff and it doesn't make sense to me, I kind of dismiss it. I was
Yeah,
like, I
like
need
I
I
said,
need to see a fit.
I I don't I don't doubt there was a conversation that happened between them probably about it, and that's probably where it initially happens. But that's what it is, right? Just a conversation. And they're both just like, hey, whatever you are looking to move, we are not interested based on what we're willing to give up, and that's probably where it ends. So
I think 80 to 90% of rumors are that.
yeah.
Yeah,
What would you offer this guy? Oh, we're not willing to give that up. All right, cool. But they did have the conversation.
right.
So
Yeah, I think Danny is talking to every team, to
well,
be
he
honest
wouldn't
with
be
you.
doing a great job or his due diligence if he wasn't at this point, right? Like if you're a good general manager in the NHL, now's the time to be calling every team in the league and seeing what's available, what's not, what they're looking for, what they might not be, right? Like that's you have to be doing that if you're trying to build up your franchise in the right
Yeah.
way. So
And 80% of the moves he made were not predictable.
yeah,
So be ready for that. Okay, last topic of the night. Let's talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll end on that. So as of right now, Florida has a 2-1 series lead. They won,
finally,
yeah, they won a game three, 6-1 after both first games were incredible and extremely tight. Um,
probably the
Edmonton did
two
not
best openings I've seen.
incredible
Like
hockey.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Like two opener games like that go into overtime
Yeah.
in terms of game 1 and 2 Stanley Cup. Like you're not really expecting that. I just said finally in the sense that like finally I made a prediction that's turning out to be right. Like where I said that, hey, like, Skinner and net for Edmonton, Bobrovsky net for Florida. I just couldn't make the assumption that, Skinner would be able to outplay Bobrovsky. And then we see kind of what happens in net for Edmonton the last game. So I want to see Edmonton win just in the sense that like I would like to see the cup come back to Canada, but just logically in my mind, like the predictions that I made, I'm just like at some point Edmonton's goaltending woe is going to bite them in the ass, and I think this is where it's going to happen, where you have their goaltender and Skinner going up against a superior goaltender in Bobrovsky, who at least he's looked lights out at least the last game to me. Like he was a big reason for them, especially in the first period, coming out with the lead and then kind of expanding on
Yeah.
it. So.
Well, we knew this would be a very close series. I assume Edmonton is not done, just because they lost one game. I expect them to rebound tomorrow. But if they lose this game, I'm not going to say it's over because they've been down 3-0 against
And came
Florida
back,
and came
yeah.
back. But right now Florida definitely has all the momentum. Sam Bennett is a menace to them. He's been a menace to
13
everybody.
goals this playoffs.
That shift that was going on the internet of that shift that he had where he just came back through a guy through
Remind me of
another
Mike
body check.
Richards a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh my God. What a shift. I understand why people are loving Sam Bennett. Um, and I still believe
I
he's going to
need to
stay in
look
Florida.
up I need to look up Bennett just like sorry, I'm pulling it up now. I just wanted to see like yeah, he had 25 goals the regular season this year and he has 14 goals in the playoffs in 20 games.
Yeah.
So that's wild. Like
Yeah.
that's
He's
just
he's
crazy
like
to
on a
think of.
70 goal pace in the playoffs.
Yeah, like he's obviously not going to keep that up next season or anything, but like you got to consider like for you to be able to put up 14 goals in 20 games in the playoffs, like that's no small feat. So he's
This,
going to get paid due to that for
this
sure.
is his time. I mean, it suits his playing style the best,
The
right?
physicality, the
Yeah.
ability to kind of battle in front of the net without the penalties being called, all that type of stuff,
Yeah.
essentially. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I still think Florida, just based off the goaltending, like that was my initial thought already that they were going to take it just due to Bobrovsky over Skinner. And unfortunately, I'm sticking with that. Like I said, I want Edmonton to bring the cup back to Canada, but I just think their goaltending is just gonna be the end of them. Like I just think Skinner can't make the big save when they need it, and it's just Bobrovsky can for Florida. That's the difference for me.
And I selfishly want the Oilers to lose so we get the 31st pick and not the 32nd. That's how much
Yeah.
invested I really have and who
I just want to
wins.
see good hockey. I mean,
Yeah,
for
that's what
like,
I loved the first two
I'd
games.
love to see it go to game seven. I just think now that they've kind of had the floodgates open on Skinner, we'll see if he can rein it back in. Who knows?
He's
But
done a good job. I mean, he hasn't had perfect games, and he has reined it back in,
no, for sure.
in the playoffs. So I expect the next game to be a lot closer than what we
Yeah,
saw, six
I think it'll
one.
be a closer game, definitely.
And if Edmonton wins, it goes to Edmonton for the game five. So
That's a huge advantage. Yeah.
yeah, if they can take one of the games on the road, like Florida did to them, that kind of changes the entire series, and then we have a best of three with it ending in Florida. It could end up, Florida winning seven again. So we will see. But if Florida wins again, I don't see McDavid rolling over and dying. I can't see it finishing before six. So either 6 or 7 games. But I said if Edmonton beat Dallas, they would win. I don't know,
Gonna stick
man.
with that. Yeah.
I don't know. No, I'm not sticking with it. I have no idea who's going to win. I was asked over and over again by my friend down the shore. He's like, "Who's going to win?" I was like, "Dude, I can't tell you who's going to win this series."
I'm gonna say
Like,
I'm saying Florida. That's the goaltending thing is my reason. I've been going with
it's a good
that.
reason. They're also
I've
the
been
best
going with
team,
that
top
excuse all
top to bottom.
playoffs about
Well,
Edmonton. So
top to bottom, they're the best team
no, fair.
in the league, right?
I just mean in the sense like I've been going with the excuse every round. I've been saying Edmonton's goaltending is shit. This is gonna be where the line ends here. Like they cannot continue with this shit goaltending. They've proven me wrong every time. So I just
Well,
want to get 1 out of 4.
I don't know
So
if he's shit, but he's not on Bob's level. That's for sure.
no, no, he's not shit. I just
He's like
mean
an
like
average goalie.
yeah, exactly. He's like average.
He's like a 15 to 20 goaltender in the league, right? He's not
Yeah,
a top five.
with Edmonton's team in front of him, that's how they can get to this point, right? They don't
Right.
need to have a top five
Yeah.
goaltender to get to this
I'm
stage. So,
impressed with Edmonton's ability to play physically. I will say
yeah,
that. People who say that they're very different teams, I think Edmonton changed their team to match Florida's
more
style.
physicality for sure.
Yes, which is why I think they look better than they did last year. And to all the Leafs fans freaking out right now, I mean, look at what they're doing to Edmonton. This is why I don't buy the whole we need to change our culture. I really don't buy that. I know a lot of people are in that camp. A lot of smart hockey people are in that camp. I don't think so. I think you just got to pick it up and do it again. But it looks like they're going to lose Mitch Marner because he's just going to want to go somewhere else at this point. But I don't think Sam Bennett's going to be available for them to bring over because I think he's re-signing in Florida, and I think Ekblad is going to re-sign in Florida too. Maybe they can get Marchand, who's been a killer this playoff. So, all right, anything else you want to add?
No, but just keep an eye out next week. Obviously, we have the big episode with Steve. We're gonna have a draft episode too. Before the draft, I'm gonna put out like a top probably 10 mock that I typically do before every draft for Flyers Nitty. So keep an eye out for that stuff. But yeah, just we really thank you guys for all the support. We like we said, right? We see the numbers rising every year to year. So couldn't do it without you. And we're gonna try to bring more content throughout the summer. We are the only Flyers podcast that continues to record weekly throughout the summer here. A lot of them take breaks. We do not take breaks. So
Yeah. I don't know if we're the only. I think Locked On Flyers does through the summer
well,
too.
that's too bad
Okay,
for that.
we're the only ones that matter. Um, yeah. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. Just to remind you to please like and subscribe. Hit the notification button for notifications to get notified when we release these episodes. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Make sure to give us a rating and a follow there as well. Again, that is the best way to support the show. So if you haven't done those things so far, please do so now. We humbly, humbly appreciate it. And also shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. Also, Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. And also a shout out to sportspider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate content from all over the internet and organize them by your favorite team. Again, the link is in the description of both the video and audio episodes. Make sure to check out sportspider.com. Thank you, Vasily, for being awesome. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. We love you guys. And remember, always stay